marriage tips. Marriage tips. And there are 7 ideas that I put together to help marriages. And I'm going to run through the 7 in as short a time as possible. 7 important things that each one of us must develop to have a good marriage. For those of you who are not married, you can take the notes. And then when you marry, practice what you have written. For those of you who are married, you can identify the reality and you take the notes too, but you are in the soup already. So there are a few tips that I believe will help you in marriage. They've helped me in marriage, and I believe they will help you too. The first thing that every marriage needs is commitment. Commitment. Every marriage needs commitment. Love is good. It's great to have love. It's great to be attracted to somebody. It's great to have a lot of romance in marriage and all that goes with it. But all the things people do in marriage, they can do outside marriage. When it comes to having sex, you can have sex in marriage, you can have sex outside marriage. People have sex before they marry. People have sex after they've married to other people. So everything you do with your spouse, you can do with somebody else. So the most important thing is not what you are doing. The most important thing is how committed you are to the person. So I believe that the most essential thing for any marriage to really stick is commitment. Is commitment. Commitment is for you to ask yourself, am I in this thing for the long run? Am I going to stay in this for the long run? Is it for better, for worse? Is it for the future? Am I going to be here when things go tough, when challenges come, when I am angry, when I am upset, when the person I married has upset me? Am I making a serious long-term commitment? Because I think sometimes people get into marriage without a long-term view because they have a short-term need to meet and the short-term is the most important to them. So commitment is very important. Are you in it for the long term? Is it till death do us part? Or till another girl do us part? Or another man do us part? Or till money do us part? Or till handsomeness do us part? Because as for beauty, it will fade. Handsomeness will fade. So many things can disrupt human life, but your commitment must be there. You must be in it for the long run. And you must be ready in terms of commitment to forsake all others and to be committed to one person. You have the option to be friends with people, but your highest, deepest, most heartfelt, most sincere relationship should be reserved to the person you are married to. Commitment means you're leaving all others. You are making every other person number 2, including your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters, your best friends, your schoolmates, your colleagues in the office, including everybody, the person who buys lunch for you, the person who buys supper for you. Everybody, the person you admire, the person who is your role model, all of them have to be number 2, and the person you have married must be number 1. That is commitment. Commitment means you leave everybody behind and you make this person number 1. It doesn't always come easy because we don't marry angels. As a matter of fact, the Bible says angels don't marry. I don't know why. Maybe they are too perfect, they can't marry. Probably you need problems for marriage to be sweet. And angels won't give each other problems, so they can't marry. We don't marry angels. We marry human beings. We marry people. And because we marry people, sometimes you marry people that you love, but they annoy you. You love them, but you don't like them. You know, you can love somebody and not like him. Because you don't like what they do. Things they do, things they say, how they say it, how they dress, how they walk, how they talk. All of that. You don't like it. You probably feel annoyed when you see the person you're married to and wonder, what were you looking at when you married this thing? But You've married it. What can you do? So you have to make a commitment. And the commitment says, no matter what it is that I've married, it's going to be number one. He's going to be number one. She's going to be number one. And every other person, number two. Don't create substitutes for what you don't like. In other words, if you think your husband is not handsome enough, don't be friends to a handsome man and say, well, it's just friendship. I'm just friends with him. It won't go any far. Once you create a substitute for what you don't like, it will go far. All right? So commitment. And you have to outlast challenges. Number two, first commitment. Number two is communication. Communication. Marriage thrives on talking. And we must learn to talk to each other. It is very easy for the talking to cease in marriage after some time and the silence to prevail. Especially, sometimes it's not because you are annoyed or you're upset, somebody says something you don't like. It's just that you don't want to talk. You know, because when you've been with somebody for so long, 20 years, after some time, you wonder, what should we talk again? We've talked for 20 years. Enough of talk. Let me be quiet, you know. So it's very easy for you to be quiet, withdrawn, because you think there's nothing good coming out of it. Or maybe you don't like conversing with a person you've been married to. It reminds me of a story of a preacher who was so upset with his wife, and the church council had to call him to counsel him, pray for. I mean, when you are a pastor and the church council is counseling you, I mean, you are in serious trouble. I mean, so the church council is now counseling their pastor, and so they call him for a meeting, and they were trying to find out why his marriage was not going on. He spoke in Ghana. He said, for those of you who understand Ghana, who don't understand, you have to interpret that by the Spirit. The man was just saying, my wife doesn't know how to make conversation. You know, and sometimes it's like that. Your husband doesn't know how to converse. When he starts talking, everything he's saying is boring. Your wife is boring. You are boring. And so you get bored with talking. But you have to find ways of talking. So talk about things. I mean, there are so many things to talk about. There are lizards around the house. There are dogs in the house. There are all kinds of things. Talk about them. And now that we're doing politics, talk about Akufo-Addo and Mills and Ejumewura and everybody. Just talk. I mean, find something that the two of you can talk about. It can be politics. It can be life in general. It can be food. It can be music. But find areas where the two of you can talk about. And no matter how close a couple are, there are certain things they can't talk about because they don't have interest there. If, for example, you like football so much and you're a man, you like football so much, and your wife doesn't know the difference between a goalpost and a basketball hoop, I mean, can't tell the difference. And when they're playing the ball, can't tell which is corner kick, which is throw in, which is foul, which is whatever. You can't then converse soccer with your friend, with your wife. But there are things that the two of you can talk about. It could be music, it could be food, it could be a film, it could be a book, it could be other people's children. At least if you can't talk about your children, gossip about other people's children, but find something that the two of you can talk about and keep going at it. So much so that after some time you broaden your scope of conversation. And one of the things I've noticed about marriage is that although we all start marriage with our own interests, there are things I like, my wife doesn't like, there are things she likes, I don't like. But sooner or later, you begin to acquire common interests. And you begin to have interests that are common to you, and that broadens the scope of your conversation. But it's important that we talk. Even when talking brings quarrel, we must talk. Because if talking brings quarrel, it's talking that will solve the quarrel. Silence won't solve the quarrel. So talk to bring the quarrel and talk through the quarrel. So it's good. Let's talk. But in talking, we must understand each other's language. And you know that men and women speak different languages. And I've said this several times. Most times when a woman says nothing, it means something. You know, women have a way of talking in the opposite. Do you want to go to the party? No. It means I want to go. You know, and if you don't learn to decode some of those things, you say, well, I asked her whether she wants to go. She says she doesn't want to go, so I left her at home. You go back home and face her. There'll be trouble. So you have to learn each other's language, how your wife talks, how your husband talks. Maybe your husband is one of those people who comes from work, he's quiet, and you ask him what's wrong, he says nothing. And when he says nothing, it means there's big trouble. Now you have to take time to find out what's going on. And most times women would learn after a few years in marriage that you don't get things out of a man by pushing him with words. You have to be quiet, tactical. If you push, he doesn't push, withdraw. But come again at another time. But if you sit down and say, please, let's talk. You have to talk. If you don't talk about this, I don't feel good. You have to talk. Now, if a woman starts talking that way, the man won't talk. Because men don't like too much talking pressure. All right, so understand how each other converses. And you have to listen to understand. Talking is more listening than what you say. Listen to the other person. So communication is very important. All kinds of communication. Third is compromise. 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 Number one is what? Commitment. Number two, communication. Number three is compromise. If you've been married for some time, you know that you have to learn to compromise. Compromise means that I didn't get all of it, but it's okay. It didn't work my way, but it's fine. I lost the argument, but I won't be angry. This is not what I would have wished. But she came halfway, I came halfway, and I'm fine with it. If you want to get your pound of flesh in marriage, you're going to get your pound of flesh, but it will be your own skin bleeding after you get that pound of flesh. You're not going to get what you want. You're not going to get everything you want. You're going to lose some things. Some things you have to learn to let go and not just insist too much. And what I have learned, one of the things I've learned is that, you know, as you grow in marriage, certain things which were thorny issues, problems, that when you raise them up, it became issues. Over time, you raise those things up and they don't become issues again. Because you've learned compromise and you are learning to meet each other halfway. And pretty soon, you have an idea of how to proceed with that issue. So compromise means you may not get everything you want, but it's all right. Give up a little, meet the other person on their terms, release some things you hold on to, and make sure that each one has something. It's a win-win situation. Nobody has everything in all. Compromise is key to a good marriage. Number 4 is consideration. By now you should know that everything is coming with C. It takes some time to work out some of these things, you know. Consideration. That means consider one another. Consider one another. You have to ask yourself, am I asking too much from this person? Am I being considerate? Am I meeting their needs? Am I being fair? Your wife works. You work. You all put in the same number of hours in the office. But you want her to put in so much hours at home as if she doesn't put in any hours in the office. Are you being considerate? Or maybe you say, as for me, I don't like maid in my house. You are a man, you can say that. Because you don't clean the dishes. If you were cleaning the dishes, most men would say, give me 10 maids. But I don't like maid. I don't want a maid to touch my things. So your wife must come from work, cook the food, clean, wash, clean the children, clean the rooms, cook good food, all with no maid. Through pregnancy, breastfeeding, going to work. Question is, are you being considerate? Yes, you don't like maid, but are you being considerate? Are you considering the person? Are you considering the person's health, the person's stamina? Are you considering what the person can handle? Or maybe you're a woman and all your sisters married rich people. Unfortunately, yours. Somebody must marry the broke man. I mean, when the distribution goes round, one will get somebody who is broke, and you got it. So you see your sisters' husbands are doing things. Maybe they are buying nice things for your parents, and your husband can't buy nice things. And you're putting so much pressure on him to buy nice things. And do you know Maggie's husband? Do you know what he did? He's bought 3 pieces of cloth for mommy. And you, what did you do? You just bought ice cream when we're going. Now, yes, it's good that he should go beyond ice cream and he should be more sensitive that you need more. But are you being considerate? The man is broke already. What are you trying to do? You want to crucify him? Because if he goes to buy 1 piece of cloth, it will tear him into pieces. So let's be considerate. Let's be considerate. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try, but we should consider one another. Consider your husband. Consider his strength. Consider his abilities. Consider what he can do, what he cannot do. Consider your wife. Consider what she can do, what she cannot do. And when we are making demands on each other, we should be considerate. And ask yourself, if somebody put the same pressure on me, can I handle it? If somebody asks me to do the same things I'm asking this person to do, can I handle it? Can I handle the same pressure I'm putting on my husband? When I'm telling him, comparing him with all the men I know, those who have got nice this and those who have got that, and you and all of that, am I being considerate? Because I know, my friends, that people don't perform well when you insult them most of the time. They perform well when you inspire them. So instead of insulting, why don't we inspire? And you insult people by always comparing them. Look at that woman, look at her hair, and look at yours. Don't you go to the same hairdresser? What was happening? You know, and things like that. Yes, I mean, there are some women, no matter how much they try, their hair will still be rough. I don't know. I mean, maybe the air blows harder around their hair, but they go to the best hairdresser, but they come and the whole thing is spiked. And you wonder, how did they get it so wrong? It's their gift. It's their gift. But if you want them to keep it well, you don't do it by criticizing. And the worst thing you can do is to compare your spouse with somebody else. I think it's not fair at all. And let's be considerate, and let's not compare with one another. And let's not try to put down the other person simply because of the fact that they don't have what we are looking for. Because life is hard for each one of us. Life is hard for everybody. Change is hard for everybody. Marriage is hard for everybody. And we have to be considerate. We have to be fair. When we're making demands, we have to think about the consequences. Number 5, consistency. 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 Consistent means that you are predictable. You are stable. You don't change by heart. One moment you are the nice, happy, darling, I've cooked your best food for you. Oh, darling, this is the food, darling. And you're then, the smell. And then 5 minutes later, Look at you. Look at you. That's inconsistency. So if you start with darling, end with darling. Those of you who start marriage and you're so excited, you're calling each other darling and sweetie and honey and which ones again? My jolly. And you're calling each other D and all of that. You have to continue for 50 years. You don't call him darling, darling, darling. And when he announces, you say, Akos. If it's darling, let it be darling throughout. Be consistent. You chose the darling. Nobody forced it on you. So, for better, for worse, darling. So, you are fighting, but it's darling. I don't like that, darling. Be consistent. We must be predictable in ways that make our spouse know where we stand. That they can count on us. They can depend on us. There are too many people betraying people all over the world. At least when you come home, you must know that this one person would die for me. This person will give everything he has or she has for me. There must be one person in your life that you can count on, and that should be your husband or your wife. And that, for me, is what makes marriage good. My wife should be able to count on me, that I'm there and I'll be there for her, and I should be able to count on her. I should be dependable. I should be consistent. She should come to trust in me, and I should come to trust in her. I should believe in her. I should believe in her explanations. We don't have to create unnecessary doubts so that when you even say legitimate things, your husband thinks you are lying. Because you're so inconsistent. You close from the office, you come home, where were you? You say, oh, I was traffic. There was traffic on the Tetekwashi. Oh, Tetekwashi, he's suffering. Oh. It's not everywhere. Tetekwashi traffic, Tetekwashi traffic, Tetekwashi. Or Circle. Or Spinktest Road. Depend on where you use. Or Obechebi. There was traffic. And then we later find out there was no traffic. Because the same road you said there was traffic. Your best friend comes to visit you 30 minutes later. He said, oh, today there was no traffic. Then you know trouble don't come. So that creates inconsistency. Now, when you tell these little lies, it doesn't help. And I think in marriage, no matter how hard it is, we have to tell the truth. We have to tell the truth. I mean, yes, you tell the truth and your husband will be angry or your wife will be angry. But over time, you have to trust each other that you will tell the truth. That even if it's bad, you will tell the truth. If it's good, you will tell the truth. And that creates consistency so you can depend on each other. So that's number 5. Number 6 is cooperation. Cooperation. Marriage is about cooperation. You know your role. You work together. You share. You have all things common. We have to cooperate with one another. Much as I know there are social roles that both men and women play. Some of these roles, you can't run away from them. Although so much has changed over time, but they are still there. It is expected that the man handles a lot of the financial burden in the home. It's for some reason. Even when the women are working, they expect the man to be the man. Finances. We expect the woman to keep the home, even if she's working. So those are some expectations. And maybe over time, those expectations will change. But when a woman goes to marry, most times she's thinking about a man who will be financially responsible. Even if the woman is very well employed and she earns more than the woman, more than the man, she still expects that the man will be responsible, because you don't want a husband who comes to sit down. He doesn't pay light bill, doesn't pay water bill, doesn't pay rent, doesn't do anything, doesn't pay the children's fees. He just comes, you cook the food, he eats, he goes to sleep, and just enjoys and praises you on how good the food was, but doesn't ask, where did the money come from? No, I mean, even if you are the richest woman on earth, you wouldn't want a man like that. So there are expectations. But those expectations does not mean that you put all the burden on one person. To say that, well, you are the man. You must take care of the house. It's your responsibility. Cooperation means, yes, it may be his social responsibility, but I'm going to help him to fulfill that role. Yes, it's her responsibility, but I'm going to help her to fulfill that role. In my house, I don't cook. Not because I don't like to cook. I used to be a very good cook, believe it or not. Because I was a bachelor before I married. And if you're a bachelor, one of your survival skills is that you must learn how to cook. No matter how dangerous and inedible the food is, you must cook it and eat it. And I used to cook, my own kind. And I thought I was good. But when I married, my wife discouraged me. I think she saw that for the sake of her life and that of our children, I better just stay away from this area of life. So I've lost all my cooking skills. I've lost all of them. I think I have them in my head, but I haven't practiced them for a very long time. And I am pretty sure that if I venture to cook, it can be very disastrous for humankind. So I just stay. But, it's because my wife said I shouldn't cook. But if she has said, cook, I will cook. But afterwards, when we are all suffering, I'll say, but you told me I should cook. Now, I haven't left the cooking to say, well, that's her job. No, it's because she loves doing the cooking. My wife loves cooking. I think she's the best cook in the world. I think she's the best. My wife is very, very, very hard working. I think she's the hardest working woman on earth. I'm telling you, that woman is hard working. I have to always tell her, listen, sit down, enjoy life. Because when we get home, we get to our room, picking this. I said, when are you going to rest? Let the things be scattered. Sit down. But that's how she is. But there are other women too who scatter things. If yours scatter things, don't go and say, did you hear what Pastor said? Did you hear what Pastor said? I'm not saying it for you to go and condemn your wife. I'm just saying if she scatters, cooperate with her. And you pick up and arrange the things. There's nowhere in life that says women should know how to arrange things. Because some of those things are not based on the fact that you're a man or woman. It's just temperamental, or it's based on your upbringing and the kind of responsibilities you took when you were very young. And unfortunately, some women may grow in homes where they were not required to cook. I used to think every woman should know how to cook until I ate a couple of people's foods. Then I realized it's not natural. It's not a natural skill. I thought I thought when you're a woman, you should know how to cook. But I ate a few people's food and I said, wow, they are not born with it. This is an acquired skill, because I have eaten some food and I pray for those husbands. I said, Lord, give them grace. They need grace to survive. But there are some women who are fantastic cooks. fantastic. Now, if your wife is fantastic cook, thank God for her. If she's not, thank God for her. If she's not, you better learn how to cook. So we have to cooperate. We work together. Even when there are specific roles, we work across roles to make sure it's easy. If your husband is the one to bear the financial burden, don't load him and say, well, it's your job. And you, the woman, save all your money to do something else. No, cooperate. Let's work together. Let's make the burden lighter for each other. And number 7, that's the final one, is compliment. 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 Compliment means recognize your partner, rejoice in their special qualities, build them up, dwell on their positives and not on their negatives. Believe you me, each one of us wish that there will be people in our lives who see the good in us. Each one of us. And when people really see the good in us, we feel good, don't we? I mean, somebody looks at you and says something nice about you. It makes you feel good. If I preach, no matter what anybody says, the most important view to me is not the church, is what my wife says. My wife comes and she says, oh, you preach well. I'm okay. You can say whatever you want. I don't care. I don't live with you. Once she says, I did well, I'm fine. If she doesn't tell me I did well, and she says, that one didn't go well, I know it didn't go well. Because her views are more important to me than anybody's view. All of you, all your views. Her views are more important. And even if you think you've done well, when somebody says it, it makes you feel good. Is that not so? You dress well and somebody says you've dressed well, it makes you feel good. You know, if my wife puts on a nice fragrance, a nice cologne, and I ask her, what kind of fragrance was that? And she mentions, I say, wow, that was very special. She feels good. She feels good. And it's true. I notice when she changes her fragrance. Not always when she changes her hair. Sometimes I don't notice. And then there has to be repentance after that, because when your wife asks you a day after, so you haven't seen that I've changed my hair. That's not the time to make excuse. That's the time to say, I beg you, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Don't say, you've changed your hair. That is worsening the issue. Even if you don't notice it, just say, I'm sorry. Oh, it's nice. I'm sorry. I don't know why. It was in my mind to say it, but something blocked my mind. That's how you go about it. But you don't go and say, you've changed it. Last week, which one was it? So compliment. And each one of us need people to rub our backs. Each one of us need people to pat us on the back. When we've done something, we've said something, we think we have made a contribution, we need somebody to do that. And in little ways, husbands and wives can make each other feel good and encourage one another and dwell on our positives from everything, from the things we do, from the work we do, and all of that. You don't take each other for granted. Because when people do the same thing over and over and over again, you take them for granted. My wife will tell you, most times, I wouldn't say every time, but most times, probably 90% of the time, when she cooks and I eat, I say thank you before and thank you afterwards. Once in a while I may forget, but most times. She puts the food, I say, wow, you are doing too much, thank you. This thing is too good, I don't even know where to start from. And then when I finish, I say thank you. I don't say, where is her job? She has done her job. She must cook, and she has cooked, and so what? Some of you men are so crude, I don't know where did you come from? You know, sometimes, I don't know, where did you grow up? No, little things like that. Some men don't know how to say it. Just say thank you What food is this? What is this? And look at the fish. Then you take the fish and smell it. It's like yesterday's fish. Even if it's like yesterday's fish, eat it like it's today's fish. And after you finish, thank her for giving you yesterday's fish today. But don't take each other for granted. Don't take each other. If your wife cleans the house, sweeps the house, don't take it for granted. Because let me tell you, it takes a lot of effort for all of us to do what we do. That's one of the things I like about my wife, because she doesn't also take anything I do for granted. If I buy something for any of our children, buy anything, she would insist, go and tell your daddy, thank you. Whatever. If I give her money to go and shop, she comes and say thank you. It's part of our lives in our home. I say thank you, she say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because somebody says, but he's a man, he should provide. He should. But money is not water. So if your husband gave you some money, you must say thank you. Let's compliment one another. It doesn't kill us. It only makes us better. In whatever, whether it's cooking, whatever we do, we appreciate what the other person is doing. So, I didn't take too long to prepare that, but I give you 7 tips. Number 1, commitment. Number 2, what? Communication. Number 3, compromise. Number 4, consideration. Number 5, consistency. Number 6, cooperation. Number 7, compliment. Okay, now go and practice it.